A topic that we just talked about was called graphing linear equations. And what we learned is that a linear equation is an equation that gives us a straight line, hence the word linear. And we talked about how you use an x and y table to graph linear equations. Now, on this topic, which is also from Lesson 51, we go a step further and we talk about graphs of horizontal and vertical lines. And really, this topic is a pretty easy topic, as you're soon going to see, as long as you kind of understand how to graph linear equations. So let's take a look at just a problem here, and let's review it before we actually get into this topic that we're going to talk about today. On the screen here, I have y equals x plus 1. And we talked about how you use an x and y table. So I'm going to create an x and y table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put numbers in for x, add 1 to it to figure out what y is. So let's use 0. All right, so remember, you can put any number in for x. Now if I put 0 in for x, and I'm going to show this down below. So if I put 0 in for x, then y is equal to 0 plus 1, so y is equal to 1. How about if I place the value of 1 in for x? Alright, so I'll do that. So let's see, y is equal to 1 plus 1, or y is equal to 2. So I get 1, 2. Now I'm not going to keep on showing what I'm doing, how I'm getting these values, just for time's sake. But I'm going to find two more values, two more ordered pairs. Now, before I continue, remember, so far I have the ordered pair 0, 1, and I have the ordered pair 1, 2. I'm going to use a negative. I'm going to put negative 1 in for x. So let's see, a negative 1 plus 1 would be 0. So y would be 0 when x is a negative 1. So I have a negative 1, 0. And let's find one more. I'm going to use a negative 2. And let's see, a negative 2 plus 1 is a negative 1. So my ordered pair would be a negative 2, negative 1. Now, if I did this correctly, I should get a graph that's a straight line. So I'm going to go over to the right on the coordinate plane, which I've already set up, and I'm going to plot these points. So I have 0, 1, which would be, so 0 means I'm not going to move left or right any, but I'm going to go up 1, so about right there. I'm going to have 1, 2, move right 1 and up 2, so maybe about right there. I have a negative 1, move left 1 and not moving up or down any. And then negative 2, move left 2 and then down 1. So it looks like I'm in good shape, because if I had an actual graph and I had an actual ruler, I would be able to draw a straight line through those points. So I've done this correctly. And then we name this y equals x plus 1. And that's how we talked about graphing linear equations. Now let's take a look at example 1. I want you to look at the actual equation, x equals 2. Now you'll notice something different here. If you refer back to the problem or the equation on the previous screen, which was, and I'm going to write it, y equals x plus 1. Notice here I had two letters. I had an x and y. Now up here I only have one letter. Now I'm going to go through kind of the long process of graphing these, and then I'm going to show you the shortcut. So x equals 2. Now I can make this equation two letters though. So I could think of it as 0y, because anything times 0 is nothing. I could think of it as x equals 0y plus 2. And really I'm not changing the equation. All I'm doing is I'm writing it in a different way. Because remember, 0 times y is 0, and what's 0 plus 2? Well, x equals 2. So this is the same equation. This right here is the same equation. These are the same equation. Now let's look at what happens if I create an x and y table. Now this x and y table is going to be a little different, because I need to put numbers in for y first, and then add 2, or in other words, put a number in for y, multiply it by 0, I should say, then add 2 to get what x is. So, for example, how about if I put 0 in for y? Well, let's see, if I put 0 in for y, 0 times 0 is 0, and then 0 plus 2, x would be 2. So my ordered pair would be 2, 0. Now, on all the problems that we've had so far, I had equations where we put values in for x first. But here I'm putting numbers in for y first, just because of the different form of the equation. But my xy table still stays the same. How about if I put 1 in for y? So I'll put a 1 right there. Let's see, 0 times 1 is 0, and 0 plus 2 is 2. Now you're going to see a certain pattern that's happening here. When y is a negative 1, x is 2. So I have, let's see, 2, 1. I have 2, negative 1. How about if I put 2 in for 0? Let's see, 0 times 2 is 0. 0 plus 2, I get 2. Now what's happening here? You'll notice that your x coordinate is always 2. Now if I graph these, if I plot these points, let's see, 2, 0, move right 2, not up or down any. 2, 1, move right 2, go up 1. 2, negative 1, move right 2, down 1. And then 2, 2, move right 2, and up 2. And what's going to happen is, and I'm going to try to draw this as straight as I can, I'm going to get a completely, what I call a completely vertical line, a completely straight up and down line going right through what should be 2 on the x-axis. This equation is x equals 2. Now the thing about this is I didn't even have to make this x and y table, because these equations here, whenever you just have one letter in them, unlike this where you have 2 letters, if you're asked to graph an equation like this, all is going to happen is you're going to have a line that's crossing the x-axis at 2, and it's going to be completely vertical. Vertical meaning it's straight up and down. The way I remember this is if somebody measures your vertical jump, you're jumping up and down. You're not jumping side to side as it would be horizontal. So what's happening here is, since I only have one letter, I'm going to have a line that crosses 2 on the x-axis, and it's going to be vertical. Let's take a look at another example. Now in this one, I have y equals a negative 3. Again, I just have one letter. Now, some of you may have already guessed what's going to happen here. Instead of, as in example 1, which I had x is equal to something, here I have y is equal to something. So that's telling me, all right, hey, I got one letter here. This is a special type of equation. And really, these type of equations should sound like this. If you see them and you have one letter, you should say, hey, these are easy, because I don't need to make an x or y table. All that's going to happen is, for example, in this one, this is going to cross the y-axis at a negative 3. So on the y-axis, a negative 3 would be right there, and I'm going to have a horizontal line going through the y-axis at a negative 3. And this would be y equals a negative 3. You do not need to make an x and y table. These are really easy, not time consuming at all once you get the hang of them. Now just to emphasize what's going on here, this equation right here is really the same thing as this. And I'll write, instead of writing plus a negative 3, I'm going to write it as just minus 3. And if you were to make your x and y table, now here I'm putting numbers in for x first. Let's see, 0 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. How about if I put 1 in? 0 times 1 is 0. 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. If I put 2 in, 0 times 2 is 0. 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. Notice that my y-coordinate is always a negative 3. And if I graph these, that would happen. Let me try 0, negative 3. 0 means I'm not moving left or right any, but I'm going to go down 3, so right there. How about 1, negative 3? Over 1, down 3, right there. 2, negative 3, move right 2, down 3, right there. And you can see why this works. So if you have an equation where you just have one letter, and say the letter is y, it's going to cross the y-axis, and it's going to be horizontal. Let's do one more, example 3. Now, I'm not going to make the x and y table. I don't need to. The first thing I recognize is that, oh, I have one letter. I don't have both x and y. I just have x, and they want me to graph it. So what's going to happen is my graph is going to cross the x-axis because of x at a -1. So I locate a -1, and it's going to be a vertical line going through a -1 like that. And that's all I have to do. And I name it x equals a -1. So what you need to do, probably the most important thing you need to do is in your notes for this lesson, underneath the topic of graphs of vertical and horizontal lines, write this down. If your equation has just one letter, it's going to be either vertical or horizontal. So if the equation involves just x, it's going to be a vertical line. And then I would write down one of these examples where we had just x, like this one. Now, if it's an equation where you have just y, it's going to be a horizontal line. And I would write down an example, like we had in example 2, I believe, where you get a horizontal line. And I would keep that in your notes so you can refer back to it. So, again, the topic was graphs of vertical and horizontal lines.